Okay, so me, Elise Cobain. I've put down music content specialist as my kind of headline. Sometimes you're known as a music editor, music programmer. It's such a new world that there's lots of different titles that people like me and work that's in this kind of area can be called. So whether you're dealing with them as a manager or as an artist, or whether you aspire to be one, there's no one title. So looking at kind of the descriptions and the duties in job descriptions is really important, and just getting a sense of what we're all called, whether we work at a big global company like an Amazon or a Google or a Spotify or a startup, all very different names. But I think this, or like digital music content specialist, digital music content manager, music editor, all that kind of stuff tends to mean the same thing with a few different kind of spikes off depending on what parent company you work for. So almost went to the next slide. Who uses Spotify? Just like that hand. Who uses Apple? Who uses something else like a Deezer or a Google Play Music? What do you use?
No, I'm a DJ, so I use DJ pools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, who in here has more than one paid subscription account? All right. Why is that? Just out of curiosity.
I just haven't cancelled Apple Music.
Okay. So Spotify's winning in your mind. What about you? Are you just?
Because sometimes they have like exclusives. And
But usually it's windowed, right? So
yes.
you're just keen. That's fine. It's your
I
money.
don't know,
No, it's just good. Well, the point I was going to make is that I've got some stats here as well. These are not exclusively up to date because obviously I don't work for Spotify, so I don't have them all as of this morning. Spotify has 140 million active users, so that's a little bit more than what we've got in this room, which is good. Over 70 million of them are paid, and Apple is set to overtake this year. So that is quite a hefty number, and the great thing about that, whether you're on the business or the production side, is that music has started to become a valued thing amongst the people out there, the average guy, which is great because in the era of CDs and downloads, there was a lot of illegal downloading and file sharing, and although that still does go on, it meant that a lot of the revenue and the stuff that allows you guys to make a living was going down, and now it has a chance to go back up. Obviously, as you guys know, particularly in business, the revenue you're getting out of streamers isn't amazing, so if you're an emerging artist, it's not going to pay the bills, but obviously the exposure and the affiliation with these platforms is the most important thing for you to think about if you're getting into that digital streaming world. Using Spotify as an example, it's got over 30 billion songs, which is quite a lot, so it's something for everyone. Over 2 billion playlists. So I think the point here to think about, and I'm sure all of you guys will probably consume them, or you've built your own if you're a DJ or just a kind of a tastemaker of sorts, is that playlists are kind of the way people are consuming music. Albums are not dead by any means, like single song listening still goes on, but people are in it because they want to be entertained in a way that's not radio. So they don't just want to switch on radio and have to think about the brand, but they do know how they feel, they do know what they're up to, or they might know what genre or what type of music they're into. So they're going to type that in the search bar and follow or subscribe to those playlists and so on. So super important. Spotify is now in over, I think it's 65 markets in the world. That's quite a few. But it's not just all about Spotify. I talk about it quite a lot because it's one of the ones that's been around the longest and kind of publishes the most stats. So it's quite a nice kind of case study to bring it all to life for you. But Amazon, obviously they pull people in by using their Prime membership. So if you sign up, you get 3 months free, I think, and then a lot of people just keep it. But then you get Amazon Music as well. So currently, or the last time they published, 100 million Prime users. So it's 100 million people that hopefully, for them, potentially will be engaging in the music side, which also includes streaming individual songs, albums, playlists. So it's the same basic construct as what you would get on Spotify or Apple, but obviously with their own editorial kind of perspective and unique stuff as well. So playlisting, very much clearly here to stay. Streaming, very much clearly here to stay. That's why I kind of moved over to it about 3 years ago after about 10 years or so working in radio and related content. So I'll talk a bit more about that later for those of you that want to get into it. So again, I've talked about obviously music streaming subscribers, but if you kind of bundle them all together, actually let's have a little game, see if you're awake. So we're currently in 2018. How many subscribers worldwide do you think there are to all the major services? So Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Deezer. I'll give you, it's in millions. Just shout a number, like.
300.
Okay, you think 300, 500. Okay, that's a lot. This year it's roughly about 180 million, which is cool. But then if you look at what it's predicted to be in a couple of years, if you can't see that tiny number, it's 221 million people. So obviously not all of them are paid, but obviously if you think about the revenue model, artists will still get money from that. That is a lot of people. If we roll back even 5 or 6 years, those kind of figures to go into a record label and say, look, people are consuming music en masse globally, they wouldn't be there. And people would still be trying to push like, okay, how do we release like a special package CD or a vinyl to try and, you know, build revenue, build money, build exposure. And now we're looking at numbers like these, which have a very clear trend. So hopefully that's going to continue, and particularly with voice, so you know, your little Alexas or your Google Homes or whatever you want to buy, that kind of frictionless kind of interaction with music and playlists is going to open that door to a lot more people, particularly the very young who haven't quite got into Spotify or their parents haven't allowed them to set up an account, can still talk to things at home. And then also the slightly older guys that maybe don't think, oh, an Apple Music account is for me, but they might ask to listen to playlists, and they might suddenly find themselves in an environment that's not radio, not CDs, not cassettes even. If everyone knows what a cassette is, right? I had a very, very awkward conversation with a teenager at Reading Festival last year, because I have a cassette tattoo, and he was like, what's that? It's like, that's video, isn't it? I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, it's good to know you all like music and historic formats. So I have talked a little bit about this. So as I say, if you're looking to work with, say like if you're doing PR, if you just want to be a savvy musician, which I obviously 110% recommend you do be, because you almost have to be little business entities of your own, whether you're focused on the performance side or not, is music editors, content specialists, I've written down a few, curators, programmers, producers, digital managers, streaming managers, product managers, streaming consultants. The spread of names I've seen, people like myself or people that work on elements of the industry that I do, have 1,000 names. But essentially, I guess in a really rough nutshell, it's about either curating music in playlist form or in groups for platforms such as Spotify, through to really niche stuff like playlist.net, which is really lively. SoundCloud, people are still curating and can have hundreds of thousands of followers. It's huge opportunities for exposure, and a lot of people monetize this as well. So you do get the good and the bad side of the streaming industry, where people will just make playlists that are great. So UKF is a great example of a couple of people that made great playlists, and now look, they've got a massive YouTube account. Through to the people which I can't confirm nor deny because I don't know, but there are very strong rumours that people are asking for money. So they might come up to you saying, be like, oh, you've got this artist, I've got this playlist, £200, I'll put it on there in a prominent position. You will get X amount of listeners, X amount of exposure. None of that is guaranteed. None of that is engaged listening, because people can smell a rap, right? You probably look at a playlist and be like, this isn't very good, or this is weird, this doesn't make sense. So, I mean, make your own decisions up about that in your own minds. As a curator and someone that takes pride, I guess, in my art and my editorial skills, I wouldn't advise it, to be honest, whether you're curating or whether you're looking to get your music out there. So that's our world. This is, I hope it's not a bit showy-offy. Basically, this is my background. I've tried to use logos because if I talked you through the whole experience, considering that I've jumped around quite a lot, I graduated in 2008. So that's, yeah, it's about 10, 11 years of like professional work, and also some stuff before. So started off in radio, have done some work for the likes of ITV, which are a broadcaster, lots of extra stuff as well. So obviously you guys are here essentially out of hours, which is good. Side hustles, you know, extracurricular work is so important, because even though you are here doing wicked courses and you're all going to get like amazing marks and everything at the end and have amazing projects, you've still got to remember that you are in this room, one of 20 people, maybe a bit more, who are a group of, you know, everyone at SAE, who are a group of everyone that's ever graduated in media, music, audio, business. So you still need to find those moments where you can be like, yeah, I've got like a music business degree, but I've also got this. And this can be your album, it can be your portfolio, it can be your super savvy knowledge on something. You've still got to hustle like mad. So I still do my own radio show on a national network, don't get paid for it. Still write for blogs, don't get paid for it. You know, I still come and make sure that I'm coming out and talking to real people, just to make sure that I'm not just someone that turns up at the office and has a fairly sexy sounding job title, because it's not enough at all, ever in life. But yeah, good thing to point out for you guys. My degree was in meteorology and oceanography, so I can forecast the weather well, the Met Office probably wouldn't agree with that because they didn't do their affiliated course, but you guys are already kind of one step ahead because you've started doing your stuff quite early, whereas I waited till I was 21 before I started professionally working in music and broadcast. So you're already ahead of me. Good. But it does help, actually, because you can't be scared of data and numbers. So I'm not. I think whenever I come and do talks or whenever I speak to quite young people, they're like, oh, your job's just sitting in headphones, isn't it? It's like, no, a little bit, but no. This is probably the most popular question I get asked by industry people. And when I say industry people, I mean people that have worked with as managers, as artists, people in the wider music business, so people like A&R, through to brand developers, artist development. They were like, yeah, but what do you actually do? Like, do you just drag and drop stuff? Do you just like, listen to a song and be like, I like that, I'm going to put it there? Like, no. So I was trying to think of a good way to describe it, and hopefully I've done it in a not too childishy way. So yes, we do listen to a lot of music. This is me, kind of every day when I'm in this role, because it is fun. The downside is, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and if you want to work in that kind of editorial world, get over it earlier, is you may be a massive pop fan, you may be a massive dance fan, you may love Latin music. If you work as a curator, I don't think there are any roles anymore where you can just live in that world. When I first jumped from Radio 1 and 1 Extra where I was working, obviously it's a lot of music, but it's still a certain type of music. I was suddenly put in a world where I was curating American hip-hop, Latin music, classical, R&B, but not just British R&B, like the whole spread. EDM that's coming across from different countries, like national kind of music from the Nordics and from Germany with some English in. So working with all kinds of music, and you can become an expert without being like the number one passionate person. So I can talk really fluently about Latino, kind of Spanglish music, all that kind of stuff. But when I go home, I don't listen to it. So, you just kind of have to make sure that your personal interests are in one side and you've got your playlist for that. But when you come to work, you have to live and breathe all different types of personas because you are curating playlists for them, for people you've never met, people that don't represent your friends, family, and the people that you know at work. So always bear that in mind. If you're in it, you really have to love music and culture, because if you just like what you do, you might as well just curate your playlist at home, which is fine. You might get very successful with them, but you can't be like a music editor with that. I touched on this before, data analytics, proxies, super important. You can't just look at like, oh, I've got these many followers or this many streams, great, I've broke it. You need to be able to analyse trends. You need to be able to look at different KPIs, which are key performance indicators. So sorry if that's, you've heard that before, but a lot of people don't. They're like, what's that? And just be able to kind of keep a sense of what's going on in like quantitative stuff. So don't be afraid of numbers. Figure out if you're getting 20,000 streams a week, or you're working with artists, or you're working on a playlist that gets that much, what that actually means. Is that good? Does that mean I can quit my day job? Does that mean I need to go waving at like a major label's front door? Like, start to get a sense of that. And there are a lot of articles you can read. There are places like 7 Digital, Media, there's a group called Chartmetric, and they put it all in quite like layman's terms. So they're basically a front door to the world of understanding streaming metrics and what that means in a broader sense. And if any of you want to clarify that, I can write that down for you afterwards, because they're just words at the moment. And this gets a lot of laugh from older people, because they're like, haha, that was me in like 2003. But you, as in, imagine that's a mirror and somehow you look like one of those. Like, you guys, as in the public, the users, are the most important people. Every company says that in their kind of marketing statement. Their audiences, their consumers are the most important thing. But if you think about music, imagine if you were listening to a playlist, like, you are the harshest critic, because you're like, that's good, that third song's rubbish. Or that edit of it's rubbish. Or why would they put that in that order? Like, I'm not coming back to this again. And with playlists, particularly if you're using them on a mobile phone app or on a voice device, you have one chance. You're not going to bother browsing around if you're on the move, or if you've asked for something and you haven't got what you want. So if you don't make it almost like the perfect product based on everything you know about listening, what the scenes do in the culture, everything you've seen about stats, and kind of, is this an artist that's perhaps ready to go on the biggest playlist in the world, or are people going to skip it? Or, do people consider this artist big enough or good enough, or have they got a lot of traction in this country? All those things mean that you guys at the end are a bit more open, basically to listen to the playlist. You might find something you love, you might be happy with the user journey, the listener journey, or you might just kind of accept it. You might be like, cool, a party playlist, that can be one of like a million things, but actually I'm getting into this, I'm going to just leave this on and concentrate on what I'm doing. But there are lots and lots of examples, and you guys will pick them out straight away as to how it's not done quite so well. So just bear that in mind. So where can you see our work? Obviously you guys use a lot of these. Sorry about I thought that would come up bigger. Basically the big green bit is Spotify. Pretty much everyone put their hand out when I asked who's got a Spotify account. It's probably got, and there was some extra bits like stats that came out recently over the last week. I think YouTube and Spotify are nearly at the same in terms of how many people stream, like how many young people stream them. So it's quite close. If you think how big YouTube is, people forget about them sometimes because they're like, oh, it's just a tool. But it's like, but you're still streaming them. And those little blocks at the side are actually playlists. So you're using playlists in YouTube. What have we got here? Apple Music's the grey one. So that's about 21%. Then you've got Deezer, who's quite big, but not in all territories. Napster, which is really, really big on the continent, like in Europe. So like Germany's still huge with Napster. Tidal, little 1% there, still alive. But there are loads of others as well. I mean, this 21.4% here is others. So if you're in India, Spotify's there, but you're going to be using one of the big 5 for them. They're affiliated with telecoms. So when you get like your O2 contract, you usually get a subscription. And because India, for example, has about 5 or 6 different national languages, they basically have a service for each. If you're in Italy, you might use Tim Music. If you're in China, the QQ. Loads of different examples. In the UK, they're the big ones, obviously Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube. And Deezer is in there, but it's not the biggest. Oh yeah, so that's the stat. I put it in this morning, that's why. So a lot of people are saying, who's bigger? Well, 16 to 19-year-olds, everyone's focused on this age group because they're at that transitional stage where they're starting to think about, what I want to put my money in life, making their own choices rather than just kind of picking up off their mates, family, parents even. So it's not bad, is it? They're actually slightly bigger in this. So this was like a US, Canada, UK. So I think globally YouTube is still a bit bigger, but if I was working at Spotify, I'd be pretty happy because everyone's like, oh, YouTube, Google, wow, they're up here and everyone else is down here. Not in music streaming. And this article is actually online, so if you type in something like, YouTube versus Spotify, you can probably get that up and have a proper read. Okay, I'm just going to grab a little drink now. Is everyone kind of happy with that? Has anyone got any questions about that? Have people heard about things like this before? Have they thought about kind of who's the biggest streaming provider? Have any of you doing kind of businessy projects? Yeah.
When I started, my first paper was actually on YouTube and Spotify.
Oh, no way! So you were like,
ta-da!
Oh, the media. So if you put that into Google, those are the guys that do loads and loads of research, not just on streaming, but consumption. So if people are buying CDs, how many people are listening to radio, they're great. So if you want to get a bit geeky and get stuck in, have a browse through their recent kind of blog posts, essentially, because they're quite good.
It's fair to say that from the beginning, all the music industry students follow Mark Mulligan.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, he's great.
Obviously, what we don't do is download the £2,000 reports.
Yeah. But the summaries are pretty good.
Yeah.
And also, do you guys have Music Ally?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So you're basically on a level with people in the industry because that's what we're looking out for, that's what we're reading. 7 Digital do some great reports now and then, BPI as well, so you'll just get used to what's useful. A lot of people do daily digest and newsletters, and you'll notice that basically they're all picking off headlines from basically Media, Music Ally and a couple of others. So you'll find which sources you like and which style of writing you actually want to absorb. So this next one is perhaps a bit more focused on the people that are aspiring to work in this kind of sector. One of the big things that I had to explain when I moved over to Sony was kind of what my purpose was. I was an editorial person. I just left the BBC working at Radio 1 Extra introducing, moved over to streaming, which in Sony's world is not only about providing a great experience for listeners, but also using that to help expose Sony artists. Like if an artist signs to Sony, they want to know not only are they going to help them get tours, gigs, sell tickets, you know, all that kind of stuff. They want them to know, or they want the artist to know that they'll have the best opportunity to get exposed and get listeners on streaming platforms. That should be part of the deal, right? So my job when I was building playlists for Sony, or Filter, as its alias is, like filter without the E, Swedish, that's why, was to create brilliant playlists that people would enjoy, and then obviously make sure that we were looking for homes for Sony artists. So a good example is Sony Music Nashville has some great country artists, so they curated a fantastic spread of country playlists that users really enjoyed, but also it was a great opportunity for Sony Music Nashville artists to get exposure. For people that were engaged in that scene and that culture, to suddenly hear a new artist or a new track by an established artist and be like, oh, this is really good. Great, so win-win. So users get what they want, Sony get a chance to expose their artists to potential fans, and obviously the artist gets a bit more money at the end, and other alternatives or options as a result. So whenever I talk to people about what I do, it's not just, yeah, we like music, you know, we look at stats, we drag and drop stuff. It's basically, I use concentric circles. So quite a lot of people, this big blue, greeny one on the outside, is a lot of people get what I kind of do. They get that I program music. They get that I'll make playlists and QA or quality assess them, basically make sure they make sense. So a hip hop playlist doesn't have Kendrick, Drake, Little Mix, something else. So it'd be like, well, Little Mix shouldn't be in there. And also updating them. So obviously you don't want tracks that are basically on stale in them, if it's quite an active front running playlist. They'll know, as we've talked about, I understand music consumer trends. They'll know that usually you're working to deliver a strategy. So the strategy could be make great playlists for consumer X group. It could be brand management. In the case of Filter, which was Sony's brand, you know, I'm looking to make sure that people know that the Filter playlists are great, as well as enjoy them. And you may be working in an environment, if you work for a commercial sector, that you're pushing tracks essentially, you're looking for homes for tracks to expose them. So I guess in the example of like Sony Music Nashville, you might see it as pushing tracks, because you might be like, right, okay, we've created this great playlist, and then this is where my country music knowledge fails me because I wasn't an expert. A big country artist, say, releases a track, and suddenly you're like, right, we've got a home for them in that playlist. We're going to put them near the top, test it, see what you guys think. Might be a little bit higher than, say, a Spotify playlist might put it, because they'll be like, oh, she's new, or that song's new. But we might put it a bit higher.
Can I just ask a question? You
Yes.
say we might put it a bit higher.
Yes.
Do you mean whoever you're working with at the time will have a service? So you're not just talking about having a playlist, not like a label having a playlist on Spotify, which I know is a thing. Are you talking about Sony would have a service that people use instead of Spotify?
Oh, no. So Filter's a brand on Spotify. So not everyone can do it. Like I couldn't do it as Elise Cobain, but certain brands might have a portfolio. So essentially, what's the best way to describe it? You know, when you click on Spotify, you can find individual playlists like Mark 31578 has created Happy Monday. But then there were also brands like Vans probably have one, you know, like Filter will have one, there's Digster.
So when you say
Hits.
find a home for, you mean the whole, like, the different brands that you're going to hook up with will have playlists?
Oh yeah, so Filter is basically the Sony brand. Within that, there's like hundreds of different playlists that we curate. We work as a global network. So obviously you're not going to put a country song in a dance playlist, but within the Sony playlist, there will be a home that's suitable for that. Same for pop, same for rock, same for left of centre stuff. So my job there was to curate playlists that reflected not only what was going on, but also like trends and things that were being signed. So if we didn't have, say, an EDM playlist, I would curate one, and then we'd have a home for EDM artists. Hi.
So Sony pays Spotify to highlight a playlist?
No, we don't pay them.
And why they highlight your playlist instead of...
Oh no, they don't highlight ours. So basically they have, anyone can do it, but you have to kind of be a brand. So you can't just launch one playlist. These are the kind of things that differ between streaming platforms. So it's kind of different because they're bigger brands. Essentially, if you forget the word brand and just put playlists in, then that's what we're talking about. So, you know, some playlists are massive and have like millions of streams and millions of followers. So imagine that's what I mean when I say a brand. So it just happens that they're all bundled under different names.
But the communication between Spotify and a company is different from if you are an individual.
I don't know any individuals.
A better treatment if you are talking with Sony than with my
I imagine Mike 123 wouldn't be looking to establish his Spotify playlist seriously though. Maybe he would. You know what, I don't actually know the answer to that, but Spotify's blog or Google will probably answer that. I've only had experience working for Filter. My personal playlist has 20 followers. That's it. So I'm definitely not going to be doing anything. And obviously all the stuff that I'm talking about here is done within essentially the Sony playlist or whatever playlist, you know, Bob's playlist. So it's just about the fact that you could start a playlist, use all these kind of principles and ways of working. You may find it grows and you've got a fantastic platform. And also remember, I'm also talking about if you want to work for say a Spotify or an Amazon or YouTube, you've kind of got to think about how to look after your playlist as well. So if you have any questions like that and I haven't explained it, like shout at the end. So yeah, so how we work, some people, like you say, get to work with like bigger brands. So some people might go and do like you know, you see people wearing jackets and stuff, and that's considered like, you know, you go and work with say Vans and you might get a pair of Vans shoes and you'll appear in the advert. So there are similar ways of doing it for playlists. So you might have seen Vans and Apple did a big thing. So that's kind of a proper business partnership. Some people have like certain artists on the front of their playlists. So it's kind of that. It's not a paid thing, but it's obviously some sort of business partnership. You know, if Diplo decides to go on the front cover of a playlist, he's probably had to say, yeah, that's okay, I agree, because I like the playlist, and you know, in return, they're obviously going to put his song there, because why would you have the face without the song? So those kind of things are business thinking, basically. So there's things like that. And why? So one of the most important things, and every editor, curator that works at any company will be, you do it because you think there's music out there that's amazing, and you think that by curating them in a playlist that you've carefully crafted, you're going to help enrich someone's life. And I know that sounds like really extra points because it's like you're just dragging and dropping music, but when you work with playlists and sometimes you get people tweet or you get people email and just say, oh, thank you, that you know, that made my evening easier, or we just really enjoyed it, or you see people sharing them, it is a nice thing. And you know, music has a really kind of emotional impact on people. So there is worth to what we do, there is credit to what we do, and you can, you know, help change people's lives. They might hear the song that they, you know, walk down the aisle to, they might hear a song that helps them just feel a little bit better that day. And I know that's really kind of high level thinking, but it does kind of, it makes you smile sometimes when you create a playlist that people react to and you're like, yes, I did it. I kind of guess it's like if you write a really great song and people are like, we love this is my favourite song ever. It's kind of like that, but without the super creative, like actual writing and playing stuff. So this is where I'm just going to talk a little bit through music editorial and how, so this is your point, when I talk about brands, I'm talking about individual playlists and how you can work with them, not brands as in like a label. So if you have a great playlist, Mike 123, and you wanted to help promote it, i.e. get people engaged, know it's there, build awareness, get people streaming it and coming checking it out, you might use some of these. Obviously some of these would require money or relationships, so you might not do this as like a single individual. Social media, that's free. You can go and set that up, build a strong brand. So Mike 123 might be the best trap kind of curator ever. And he might have a really great handle on Twitter, he might have a fantastic Instagram account, and he's also got the streaming platform, so he's also got his Apple and Spotify account that he's tweeting about. Maybe he goes and puts on a show where he invites some of the artists he's put on that playlist to come and play. A very similar example recently is obviously the whole RWB stuff with Spotify and massive Ali Pali events that are related to a playlist. That's a great opportunity to build kind of connection and exposure with playlists, which are essentially a digital product that you kind of interact with one-on-one. Suddenly you've brought loads of people together that love the brand, stream the playlist, and you're all together in one place with the artists who are on it. So that's a great example of how to kind of take it out of house. You might work with the influencers and artists, so you might work with some of the artists you put on the playlist to be like, hey, can we use you on the front cover? Or, you know, if it's an emerging artist, you might be like, we love your music, we're playlisting it. Would you want to tweet about it? Some of this stuff happens organically because the artists are so excited. They're like, oh my God, I featured on like the whole Mike 123's playlist. Amazing, go and listen to it. Mike 123 is going to be our new playlisting guy, whoever that is. And a few other bits that are obviously going to be for much bigger companies. So you might do some partnerships. I guess you could do that actually, you know, from start off. But you might partner with someone. You might do some outdoor and print. So you might have seen there was a Spotify bus at one point going around London. There have been some billboards, not just here, but in America and Canada. So lots of other things. I'm not sure why that's shoved over there. It's meant to be central. Okay, so playlist concept. And what I mean by this is basically how I've approached building playlists. So although there's no one size fits all, what I'm going to do is just spend a bit of time just talking through how I've curated not only individual playlists, but the whole kind of portfolio. So there's something for everyone or for different types of music consumers. So whether you just want pop or whether you're like on the cusp of everything that's breaking, like how you kind of look after those audience groups. So these are examples from Filter. So that's the Sony brand. Obviously a little bit dated. The Hot 50, like what do people think that is? Considering that is the Chainsmokers and this was circa about a year ago. Pop charts, exactly. So that's good. That whole 360 thing there, the name, the artwork, if you could see like the first 10 tracks as well at the time, that would all make sense. You'd get it. You'd either like it or you'd be like, it's a bit too broad for me, I can get that somewhere else. Clubbers Night. So this was an example of, I'm just going to check what I've called it in here. Notes are there. So that's kind of a hits one. This one here is a bit more moody, isn't it? Like if you're in like a clubbers vibe, it's probably, unless you've got a quite liberal schedule, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, if you're going to be going out or hosting a house party, kind of does what it says. I mean, Calvin, when he came back last year, had a lot of things going on for him. So it was like, if you want your kind of club popular track, you might go for something like that. Now this one is like HIIT workout, like HIIT. I don't know if you say it HIIT or HIIT. I would just say HIIT. Yeah, perfect, good. So that's a bit more of a moment playlist. So, you know, you're actually going to do something and you need a soundtrack. Other examples might be cooking, studying, sleeping even. It might be something really specific like weddings or christenings or baby showers, which I've seen playlists for. But yeah.
Is it a big deal putting someone like Calvin Harris as the
yeah.
Is that a big deal?
Well, I mean, if you were...
What do you think about?
Oh yeah, like the whole, I always, whenever I speak, and I did this when I went to South by Southwest in America and talked about playlisting is a 360 thing. Like you have to think about all aspects. If we take these examples, which I've screen grabbed from Spotify, your name, your image, and that little bio at the top, however many words it is, and like the first few tracks you see, that is all that you see when you open it on your phone and when you look on your screen. And if I had called this the Hot 50, but my artwork was, you know, the montage when you can't be asked to put anything up, and I'd just written like my playlist, no bio, like that's a very different impact to this, which looks professional. It didn't cost me anything because it was like you could do all this on Photoshop or whatever you use at home. Words, you know, just be playful with them. Think about what people are searching, like Hot and 50 might be something you put in if you wanted chart music. I'd probably use the word chart in the bio, the very first line. So if you think about that, with clubbers, obviously a lot of people search club. In the description I'd probably put Friday night party mix, which are other words you might put in. So people, you know, search engine kind of rules, they may find this. And if they found this and saw like a montage or, you know, just some random screen grab of colours, or they saw this and saw Calvin's face, they might be like, click on that one because it looks better, it looks professional, I can see it's Calvin. Doesn't always work with emerging artists because they might not know who it is, but it's also a great opportunity to profile them. So if you've got a breaking future bass artist, and actually you've probably got a percentage of the audience that know who that is, they'll be like, yes, that's for me. Or a group of people that see it and they're like, that's quite cool. It's great exposure for the artist. Yes?
So do you, as the playlister or editor, do you choose which one goes on the cover?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did at Sony. I don't know if, I think Spotify might be a bigger group of people, for example, or Apple. Amazon have started to do some artwork I've seen. YouTube, it's a bit different, isn't it? 'Cause it's all just stills of the screen. But yeah, and I mean, if you were curating your own playlist on Spotify, as long as the rights for the image are free or you've taken your own, then yeah, you can. Or it's something, you know, you can get on those picture websites that obviously are free and rights free. So yeah, kind of hits, mood, moment, just pop there is an example of a discovery playlist. So essentially it's new artists you might not know. These guys did a little bit of a chart spree last year. They're called the Veronicas. So yeah, you might kind of get that just popped. You might call it discovery. You might call it, think of brands you might already know, like you might call it fresh or hype or, I'm trying to think, BBC introducing types maybe, something like that. And then the ones at the bottom are super niche. So this is Japanese. I think it's kawaii. So there's a certain scene over there that's super cool, and I'm sorry if anyone's like Japanese and knows exactly what that means, but I just thought that was a great screen grab of something where you're going to have a really small audience, but if you've curated it well, that small audience will keep coming back. They'll be really engaged with the playlist, and you'll probably get a lot more traction from every song you put in there than if you just tried to drag and drop it in any of these. So they're kind of 5 broad types. Thinking about exactly who your audience is, what they need from it, what they're going to see, because obviously that's not an artist, but if that's your thing, you'll be like, ah, I get it. Yes.
Do you think it's difficult to, or more difficult to create playlists for the Asian market? Because it's such a peculiar kind of market. Sometimes they're very like specific and only like their own kind of music, but still they like are more like open-minded to like Western music and stuff like that.
I think it depends what your kind of hypothesis is, like your point of the playlist. Like if you, my experience working across a few and speaking to others who playlist it, it's quite hard in some territories, like France, for example, to do a mixed French and international hip hop playlist, because the people that like French hip hop love the French hip hop, and the people that like the international like that. They may listen to both, but actually in one listening session, they want one or the other. The Asian market is so broad. Because it's like if you go Philippines, they love pop music and there's a huge local scene, but then they also support like some artists like that are British, but actually do far better over there than they ever do even in the UK or Europe. So again, it's about just knowing the scene and the culture. And if you're not there, you can always learn through like Spotify charts, through Apple charts, through Shazam. Shazam is brilliant. And just kind of absorb yourself in that scene. Listen to local radio stations that are there. Look out for like the big streaming companies and see what they're playlisting, and you'll get a sense of how to curate well for that market. But it is difficult to do it without being there, for sure. But you do find quirks. Like the Asian, as in particularly this is where my geography is really bad, like kind of the Malaysian, Philippines kind of area, Taiwan, that's got a very, very specific sound. Then China and Japan have things going on. Australia and the New Zealand scene are some of my favourite scenes in the world to work with because they're so eclectic, and rock is huge still over in Australia. You know, Europe, you can bundle it together, but there are still little nuances going on. So it depends where your focus is. Like if you're working with an artist, or you've got a business, or you are an artist here in the UK, you might want to first think about how you're going to work within your own market because you know it and you're here, or your home market. And if you want to kind of tackle abroad, get advice or spend a lot of time getting absorbed in that scene, because, I mean, it's hard because you're not there, you're not native, you don't know all the tastemakers, you don't know where to look for. So that's a project, but you can do it. So this is something that I always bang on about. When you're curating playlists, one of the easiest ways to get through to people is to curate for activity, mood and moment. So we kind of touched on that on the slide before, but it is so crucial, because if you curate playlists that are like best rock or top dance music, like there's a million playlists out there that are probably well established, well ahead of you. You may find a very niche audience to go for, that perhaps like a specific type of, say, Arab trap or something. You may be the first to go for that. Go for it. If not, you can be super creative with these. Like as I said, I saw a playlist for baby shower, but imagine how many people, particularly with voice devices, are going to be like, got everything, I need some music. Alexa, play me something for baby shower. If someone's curated a playlist, boom, you're there. Do you know what I mean? Or mood, like think about colloquialisms as well. Like I always, when I go and speak to older people, I'm always like, oh, imagine if like a young person asked for a dope playlist and all you've got is hip hop, pop and dance. Well, they're going to be like, oh, there's nothing for me. Whereas if they type that in, or they type in, you know, something, a street slang, something that's spelt out, like phonetically, but is like standard practice in the kind of the Twitter and spoken world, you might be able to hit them on the nail. And you've got, hopefully, a well-curated playlist for them. And also think about moments, like, there's all different things across the world, like summer break, you know, like spring blossom, like all these kind of moments that you know, particularly as younger audiences, that you know are going to resonate amongst your peer group. Why not have a go curating them? Put that keyword first. You know, think about what music you would like to hear. You know, whenever I'm trying to explain it to people, I talk about things like road trips. You know, road trip, what kind of music would you like to hear? Obviously, there are lots of different versions of what a road trip might sound like to you, but then if you type that in on a big streaming service, there will be lots of different profiles for you. So if you're a bit more of a pop road tripper, cool. If you like your Kings of Leon when you're driving, you got that. If you actually want to be a banging playlist and you want like all the latest, you know, Martin Garrix remixes, there are versions of that. But there might be something else more niche that I'm missing that's starting to bubble up. You know, Notting Hill Carnival is also a really good one because there's loads of different routes you can take. But you can be quite obscure, and it's really powerful. It means that when you're not a huge playlisting brand or you're not publishing as a Spotify, that means you know, the Mic 123s of the world can have a chance to suddenly pop up and curate some amazing playlists and be the first person to do it, the first person to call it that name, and suddenly you've got a massive playlisting brand. So something to consider if you want to particularly create a playlist as like a business thing or as a brand thing rather than just doing your own stuff. Okay, so these are some real life examples of how big streaming companies have packaged up music. So, you know, like when you go on to play, it might be something like Google Play, it might be Apple, they always have like browse or like feature sections. So you don't really know what you want, you can't be bothered to spend all day going through search. You might be like, okay, for like hip hop today or for like study or chill. So these are examples of some of the ways they're put together. So this is a screen grab from Google Play. So this is some of the things that they've put together. They've classified this collection and more as hot new music. So that kind of makes sense, right? Like ones to watch, like new hip hop, best new music. They all kind of make sense. You might want to click on some of them. You might want to have a little browse because there might be a whole load of playlists further down that you want to go through. So that's kind of almost like a bucket header. Hot new music. It might be chart music. It might be popular dance floor tracks, stuff like that you can just put together. This is kind of similar. So this is a bit more moment, isn't it? So it's like party starters. You might see this on a Friday night or a Saturday night. You'd pop all these playlists together. So these are playlists, that's kind of how they look on Google Play, just in case that wasn't clear. And you might be like, right, okay, these are really big playlists that people click on Friday or Saturday nights. Or we think that they would work. Tech House Party might not be the biggest, but you might be like, hey, people might actually be looking for something like that. It's not an obvious choice, so you might throw it together under party starters. Context. You know, weekend good times. Might be brunch. It might be, I'm trying to think of other moments in the week, coffee breaks, things like that. So they're just moments. And the same. These are just things that the editor might have sat down and thought, okay, so if you were on the weekend and you just need some noise and you didn't want to listen to radio, you might want one of these, which actually that would work. The last time I did something like this, it was during that freezing cold spell and someone was like, wow, do you want to listen to Beach Beats? It's like, well, you might aspire for it to be nice. You might want to do something manually. So I've called this curated collections. I would imagine, because this seems to be a mixture of, that's a playlist, that's an EP, isn't it, when that came out, that's a track. So you might want to, for example, put things together so that it's, like if you were a grime fan or you were searching like street songs or urban or something like that, you might get a specially curated collection, which is a mix of albums, EPs, songs, playlists that are perfect for an audience that maybe are into that. I don't know if UK Street Sounds is a, oh no, you can't see that. So all the latest from grime and UK hip hop, that says in tiny letters. So if you were looking for something like that, that might be really cool. You may want to curate your own pop version or EDM version, which has a couple of latest releases from Friday, some super cool playlists, and a couple of LPs. So it doesn't have to all be about playlists, although that is the main point of consumption. These are just some other examples. I don't want to keep using Google and Spotify, because kind of everyone knows what they're like. Deezer do something called Deezer Recommends. So obviously an editor has had to sit down and think, right, okay, at this point in time, I want to put these forward. Playlist picks as well. It says they're chosen for you by our editors. So they might be having, that's quite an interesting mix, isn't it? Instant rock, today's house club. But okay, that's fine. There's something for everyone, I guess, there. So they've just thought about what can we put forward. So that's algorithms. So what I mean by that is you get it on Spotify. It's basically the stuff that powers your Discover Weekly. So that no editor is in charge of that. That is literally based on your listening habits. So I guess at the time I was using Google Play Music, they were like, hey, NERD's released a new album. why don't you have a listen to all this cool stuff? Stations. Now, does anyone know the difference? Because not all streaming services have stations. No? Okay, so it kind of does what it says in the tin. So playlists are ones that are hand kind of made for you. Albums do what they say, tracks do what they say. Some services have what's called stations, which are essentially mirrors of what a radio station would be. So you might click on Top Pop, and what it is like an algorithmically generated song. So it's like almost like a fake playlist, but it's based on, say, either popular songs or what you as an individual listener might listen to. And you can just leave that playing forever, and it will just tick along from song to song to song to song. And your first song will be the most perfect song either for you or that genre ever. And if you've been listening 3 days, you might start getting a bit weird. It might start going into the archives or picking out some random stuff. But that's the whole point of this. It's basically reflecting people that just want noise, but they don't know what they want. They're just like, yeah, sure, I'll listen to some easy pop. I know those faces, or that sounds cool. They'll just hit play, and there's just noise without the talk. So that's another way things are packaged up. Also exclusive content. So you'll see someone said about Apple having exclusive stuff. So yeah, you can obviously pick that up. A lot of things are done in deals, so it might be that they expose certain artists. So Deezer Next have obviously picked these 3 artists to go ahead with. Apple does exclusive. Spotify are starting to do it all the time. So
What's Joey Barton doing on there?
I don't know what The Edge is. It might be a podcast. Actually, of course it is. Deezer Originals. So this is curated content. So Deezer will often go round, and I think they've done some original content for like the dance scene as well, where they like interview people. So it's more like a podcast, I guess, interactive podcast. I think Spotify do a few as well, don't they? Where it's not just playlists, it's like original commissions. So you might start to see that pop up as well. Stuff that's not radio, not playlists, but somewhere in the middle, like short form, 20, 30 minute pieces that you might want to bung on, listen to, learn something, hear from your favourite artist, hear from a great label, etc., etc. Becoming very, very popular as well, particularly with voice speakers. And this is actually where we might come back to your point. Oh, sorry, I don't know your name, but you, about local audiences and global appetite. So you might curate, as I said, Deutsche Rap, basically German rap. That is perfect for the German audience. It's not really going to travel abroad though, if you think about it. Like if you speak German or that's what you're wanting, that I don't know who that artist is, but if you're into German rap, you know who that is, and you'd click on it and play it. This one, breakup songs, everyone gets what it means. It's curated with kind of, that in mind rather than the German rap. I think that particular playlist is curated out of the Nordics, but actually it's consumed everywhere. So it just shows that actually you could go super niche and engage, your local audience, people that you know inside out. But if you want to be ambitious, maybe use that whole kind of mood moment activity to find a keyword that everyone gets. Breakup songs, sad songs, happy times, obviously those are all taken. But if you find the next version of that, you could be that guy. So playlist structure. So this is literally like what song you put after what song. There's kind of a no one size fits all, but there are certain kind of overall techniques that I think you should always bear in mind. It's certainly helped me. Yeah, so there you go. Literally, what do you do? One of the things that I always talk about is kind of your holistic view, which is kind of like your overview, particularly if you want a portfolio. So if you don't just want one playlist, but say if you're quite ambitious as an individual, or you've suddenly got your dream job at, Amazon Music or YouTube or something, and you're like, right, you're looking after these 60 playlists. That's quite a lot. And that is how much you might have to look after, say, over any kind of rotation period. You want to make sure that you're covering something for everyone. You want to make sure that you haven't got 2 playlists that are called something different but actually sound the same, unless there's a tactical reason. Like you might want a top 40 and you might want a party playlist, and actually there might be quite a lot of overlap, but different types of people would listen to that. You might get people click on the party playlist that only use their Spotify, YouTube, whatever on a Friday night for when they can't be bothered. Or you might get people that come back to it every day and they'll be like, oh, this is the same as that one, that's a bit weird. So think, I guess, about that whole portfolio rather than just imagining someone comes to that one playlist and they only love that one playlist. Because you don't use more than one. You like look around. And particularly if you're looking to build a brand or you're working with a brand, you want to make sure you look for the gaps. So if someone's never curated a playlist on like alternative grunge or something, and you're like, cool, right, we're going to have that in there as well, rather than just do the same pop, dance, whatever. So if you're working on that side of things, just think about how you can be a bit different and set aside from the crowd. The flow. So I think we've probably all been there. We've put a playlist on, we're getting into it, and then suddenly there's that crunk track in the middle, and you're like, skip, next. You can hopefully eliminate that by not only using your ears, which tell a lot. A lot of playlisters like, oh, create this great playlist. Did you listen to it? No, it's like 60 songs long. Okay, cool, well, how do you know if it's good then? Because if you think about it, you may love a song and be like, it's perfect, but in your head you're listening to the chorus. You're not listening to the intro and the outro and how that flows with all the other songs around it. You actually might have a really banging track, but at the end, maybe there's like a 20-second little, like, I don't know, melody, nice calm bit, and then suddenly the start of the next track could come in like bam, and it's like, oh wow, like people, you've just lost people. They've all gone to the toilet or gone to the bar in that like 20, 30 seconds that you've gone low tempo. So thinking about things like that, and also literally thinking about the flow. As in literally, right, that song comes after that song, does that sound right? You know, if I suddenly play 3 really big songs and then I play an unknown artist, that's the point where everyone's going to leave, because they might not be expecting that. So just literally listening through and listening to the whole thing, or at worst, doing the end and the beginning of songs to see if they work together. That's very important, because that'll be the first thing that people pick up on. You'll make a great playlist, you'll give it to your mate, and they'll be like, oh, that was great, but you know, like the first song was like, wasn't the radio edit, it was well long, it was like 7 minutes. It's like, duh. So, and structure. I know when you have a freemium account, it's a bit different, like on Spotify, because it just shuffles anywhere, but if you pay for premium, you will kind of hear the tracks in order, unless you put it on shuffle if you want to. So imagine if you're opening a big rock playlist. Your first 10 tracks need to be the ones that grab people's attention. They need to be the ones that are most popular, ones that fit. If you've called it top 40 rock and you put in some unknowns, that doesn't make sense. So I always tend to work in blocks of 10 songs. First 10 need to be the big ones that make the most sense to that playlist, either the most popular, the most appropriate, the ones that you feel are going to kind of summarise that mood or moment perfectly, keep people engaged. Once you get down to kind of the 20 or the 11 to 20, like the next set of 10, you might want to mix it up, maybe put a couple of throwback tracks in there, or maybe a really big new song that you think a lot of people might have heard, but it's not like radio friendly yet. Then when you get down to the next block, you might want to start experimenting a bit more, being a bit more playful, and so on and so forth. Playlists are anything. I wouldn't really recommend doing playlists under sort of like 60 tracks, unless it's like discovery playlists, because people leave them on. And if they've had it on for like a little while, or they want to shuffle through it and pick it out, like if you have a playlist that's only like 10 or 15 songs and it's not proper contextualised with loads of tweets, or you know that's your thing, you know, imagine if you saw a Spotify playlist with like 10 songs in, you'd be like, oh, it's glitched. I'm not going to click on that. So bear that in mind as well. If you're doing like context playlists, so say you're doing, actually gym's a bad idea because no one goes to the gym for like 4 hours, but cooking playlists, party playlists, you want them to go on for at least 4.5 hours. So people have got that option to leave it on, click through. If it's only like 30 minutes, people will be like, oh, that wasn't good. And they literally say that sometimes in tweets, like they're really bold. They will tweet like big brands and they'll be like, that was shit. I'm like, great, thank you. And this is quite important actually, and a lot of people don't think about it. Whether, obviously, if you work for certain brands like a Spotify or Vivo, like you kind of work for them and you find out who your audience is and who uses it. Like a YouTube user is going to be very different to an Amazon user, because the YouTube people have probably gone there for the visual and you know what's trending and all the rest of it. And Amazon people might have a very different kind of need and motivation to use it. So always think about that. Apple, those of you that use Apple, it's very dance and hip hop orientated. So you might not have the best success in putting a folk or a jazz playlist on there. Spotify is great at mood, moment, context. So if you want to come up with like, you know, feeling sad, study, that kind of thing, or you just want to try and go for the biggest platform, you might go for that. There might be other playlists out there across the world that do really niche stuff. You know, there might be like a dance-only streaming service, or, you know, SoundCloud might suddenly do something that's really cool and you'll be like, right, that's my world, I need to be there. Spotify might be important, or Apple might be important, but that's the place I need to be. So it's important to kind of just be aware of that ecosystem, and also the amount that's out there. Like in the UK, we just think about big 3 or 4. if you're looking to like promote, say, to the African market or the American market, it gets messy. Pandora, Sirius, like they're all huge names, but not here, not unless you really know your stuff. So have a little delve. Ah, yes, the future. Yes, someone laughed. I showed this to someone and they were really concerned. They were like, what is this? I don't know what that is, but one of the important things that we're always talking about in playlisting is, so like playlisting, like 0, the original playlisting was, wow, you can stream songs. That's cool. You don't have to wait for it on radio. We don't have to buy a CD. Playlist like 2.0 was, oh, there's playlists. People are curating them in groups. Oh, that makes sense. That's good. Now I don't have to find the individual songs. I can just get my hip hop here or get my Afrobeat. Playlisting 3.0, as we're now talking about, is, okay, so how are people accessing it? You know, and how personalised does it need to be? One of the things I always talk about is voice speakers, DVAs, digital voice assistants. Does anyone have like Alexas or Google Homes or Siri or Bixby or any of those? Cortana, who is that? Yeah, it's quite, I always use this word and so does the industry, like it's frictionless, isn't it? You're like, Alexa, play this, or okay, Google, do this. And there's noise. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, actually, you know what, if that user flow works and that personalisation works, so if you ask for, oh, can you just play some music while I cook? And they plays you something you like, I'll be like, oh, cool. And that's all based off the fact that you've probably got a service that you've logged in for that's got a great algorithm that's personalised to you, learns every time you play. Maybe there's a little bit of banter when you're trying to discover something new, but that kind of frictionless interaction with music is, and I sound really profound saying this, is the future. Because if any of you have got nans or granddads that you've bought a device for, they'll talk to it all day and they'll get it to play all the oldies. You put a 2-year-old in front of it, they'll talk to it more than its mum or dad and ask for, like, I got exposed to, if anyone watched CBeebies, like the Dougie Stick song. If any of you have nephews, nieces, kids, it's ridiculous. But kids asking for music at like 2, imagine what they're going to be like when they're 8 and they're starting to think, oh, I actually like music, can you play me whoever Dua Lipa is at the time? And that's it, that's their habit formed. You know, they're going to be like, why would I buy a CD? Why would I use my fingers to type in a word when I can just ask? And that's coming quick. So yeah, these are all the big ones at the moment. Everyone's talking about how important, I think it's 1 in 5 households in the UK has one. And out of that, not even news is the top, it's music. So people might still be asking for, you know, play me Radio 2, play me Classic FM. But actually a lot more people are experimenting and being like, oh, can you play me this song? Can you play me a bit of indie? And at the moment, that's a pretty good way to access music. Like, it is huge and it's growing. And it's not just this country as well. You know, it's like, it's even like penetrating well into like kind of Asian markets as well, which aren't considered like the first Western kind of emerging tech guys. So super important. So one last thing to say on that is obviously these guys change everything that I've talked about before. There's no screen on this. I know actually Amazon's got some with screens on, but actually the whole kind of playlist name doesn't mean as much, because people might not ask for Clubbers Night, but they might ask for music, like club music, for example. They might not ask for your super cool, aptly named playlist, but they might use the same words. So this is almost quite scary for playlisters and for streaming services, because they're like, but I can't show them anything, I can't give them a menu, I can't show them what my first 10 tracks are, because I know they'd love it. They literally have to be like, oh God, how do we get you through all the mess? Imagine if you're not Amazon Music and you've got an Alexa, and you've just said, play me some rock music. That's going to go straight to Amazon Music content rather than Spotify or Apple unless you've set it up. And then it's like, it's their curation over anyone else's. So there are massive hurdles. I don't think anyone really knows the answer. There's lots and lots of experimentation going on, lots of user testing. So if you are interested in that world, just, you know, keep like a Google feed on it, because there are articles coming out every day about how best to provide music for people, and, you know, how do brands like the BBC curate their content for voice first, which is something I'm working on. And it's like, it's quite scary, but it's quite exciting. Because imagine if you could talk to a speaker and be like, oh, can you play me this? Oh no, it's not quite right. Can you shuffle it up, make it a bit more up-tempo? And within a short amount of interactions, one of those gets it. That would be amazing, right? I don't think the tech's there quite yet, but if you think about, that wasn't here like a couple of years ago, and now it's in 1 in 5 UK houses. So imagine what it's going to be like in a couple of years' time when you guys are really getting into the world of work. That could be staple. You might not be having like boom boxes, you might not be going, you know, to Spotify events, you might just be having this with big screens that connect to like your fridge and this and that and that. And cars, that's next. Spotify is going to launch their first voice-to-voice for cars. So radio is like, oh God, we're dead now.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be mad. Okay, so this was just a little thing I wanted to do at the end, because I know obviously some of you might be interested in working with as a music editor, or, you know, incorporating that into your type of work. So I just wanted to kind of give an overview that I always say to interns whenever I work with them, and they're like, oh cool, we want to do your job, or we want to go be like a producer of music and work with stuff. So these are kind of the things that I would advise you not to do and bear in mind if you're trying to follow this path into the way of work. If for some reason someone does start offering a streaming degree, be very skeptical, because I think something like a music business degree, giving you a bit more of like a wider insight into the music industry, is hugely important. When I left the BBC and joined Sony, I didn't speak marketing, and it was a massive like wake-up call for me to go and study. I learned how the commercial sector worked so that I could do my job effectively. And if you guys already have that kind of business acumen and understanding of how it works, both for artists and labels, and for streaming services and so on, you're already way above a lot of people that have either come down the commercial route, the editorial route, or they're artists. If you can kind of combine that world and just be a bit savvy about it all, it will help your lives, whether you're an artist or whether you're trying to work in the kind of the desk side of the industry. That's cut off. One of the things I always say to people, there are no such things really as internships. No one leaves as a graduate or gets their second year kind of summer internship at a Spotify or a Google. So you always have to do the side hustle, set up your own playlists, you know, run your own nights, you know, work on your own music, do all that first. Because even, imagine you're going for, let's use an example we all know, you want to be a producer or presenter on BBC, Radio 1, one of the biggest young networks in the world. You don't just turn up and be like, oh, I've got my degree in radio production and this is what I'm going to do, hand them a bit of paper. They want to see that you've gone out there, and if you want to be a DJ, that you've been doing shows forever on community radio and been out DJing around the country and know your stuff. If you're a producer, they want to see that portfolio. It's exactly the same for streaming, but what I usually get from people is like they'll get out their phone and be like, yeah, I made this playlist, and it'll be like my mum's birthday party, like 40 playlists or something with like 2 followers, and they'll be like, yeah, it's really good, isn't it? Like, I curate all the time, I know platforms. And they'll be like, okay, so what if you're not curating for that event? What if I've given you the opportunity to curate an Afrobeat party for a group of 16 to 24-year-olds that live in the north? How are you going to do that? That could actually be something you're asked to do. So yeah, have a go at stuff and don't be afraid to experiment. It's better to do risky stuff and experiment now than when you're 10 years into the job and someone's like, can you do that? And you're like, no. So yeah, it's not like a to-do list, like you were never finished. Music and culture never sleeps. I noticed it the other night. I went to bed, I think last bank holiday Monday, got up in the morning at 8 o'clock. The Childish Gambino video dropped, everyone was talking about it, and I was like eating breakfast, and I would tell my WhatsApp like 1,000 texts come through, like, oh, have you seen this, blah, blah, blah. And they were having in-depth discussions about specific scenes in the video, and I'm like, what? Like, I've just woken up. So that's quite a specific example of how you can be slow just by having a sleep. I'm not saying don't sleep, but I'm saying it's not one of those things where you do your job, you go home on Friday, that's it. When I go home on Friday, I'm going through New Music Friday for 4 different countries that I think are important to my work. So, yeah, it's an important thing. And yeah, it's not a desk job. If you like music, you need to kind of come out, meet people, go to festivals, go to shows. For you guys, it feels like it'll be quite natural because that's your thing. But a lot of people do think it's quite drag and droppy, and it's not. So if you go out and you're interacting with artists and people, like if you go to festivals, talk to people that aren't your mates and just get a sense of why they're there, because it's super important. And yeah, just some things that you know. I've already said, use stuff, build your own, go out there, speak to people, observe people, because in the nicest way possible, you are not young anymore. You don't speak school. As soon as you leave school, there are like colloquial words that come through that people are using all the time. And as soon as you clock over 17, 18, you're out of that zone. So whatever you can do to keep in that zone and keep ahead of what's important for those guys can be like amazing. It can really, really help, priceless. And also, like, if you do have the opportunity, or if you have money, essentially, go to things you wouldn't go to normally. You know, go if you like hip hop, go to a rock festival and just see what goes on, even for the day. Or go to, you know, Afropunk if you listen to dance music. Just experience things. Like, I went to my first club night, like, you know, proper club night at like 24, like Ibiza style. Because I was just like, I need to know what goes on here, because usually I'm the kind that bails at like 10 o'clock before it gets going. And that was hugely insightful. And I saw things I never want to see again, but I got a sense. It's a little bit of everything. You will sit on your laptop. You will have your phone with you at all times. You will be talking. You will be making notes. You'll be out on the street and hear something. You'll be slyly trying to Shazam someone's car as they go past, and you're like, didn't get it. But that's so important, because you can be inspired by anything. Something you see, you'll be like, oh, if I curated a playlist for that, or that's a really cool song. And then you get the embarrassing moment where it's like a song from like 6 years ago that you definitely should have known. That still happens to me. And networking. You've obviously turned up tonight. I assume you guys know each other. But the power of networking is so unbelievable. Not only in terms of networking with artists and managers, making sure, you know, you can talk about what you're up to, your best practices, sharing music, talking about what you're up to in terms of who's going to playlist what. But it also helps for jobs. Like, imagine if you two are going for the same job. Imagine the head of whoever's music company knows you, seen you out at a few shows, maybe clicked on your playlist, and you've got an amazing CV, but don't know who you are. It does go like that a little bit. But it can also be a blessing. You know, sometimes it means you can get offered jobs, or you can get into places perhaps a little bit easier by having a good professional working relationship in the right kind of way with certain people. So it can be a pain sometimes, and sometimes I just want to be really antisocial and go home. But, you know, if you are, you know, out and you've got a ticket to somewhere, like, just go. And if it's really dry, obviously you can leave. But sometimes you turn up and you're like, I know you from somewhere. Oh, you're the manager of this guy, or I think I've seen you at a few gigs. Oh, yeah. What do you do for work? Oh, you're in that job. Oh, cool. Hi. Like, here's my business card, or whatever people do these days. I don't know. Talk. So yeah, hugely important. Can't recommend it enough. So yeah, hopefully some of you might come and work with me in the future. I've seen you all. I know you're here, so that's good. So if any of you, your faces appear on my desk at some point in the future when I'm doing something very cool, that'll be ace. That was kind of all I had to talk about, and it feels like I've talked at you a lot, but my voice held out, which is good. Does anyone want me to answer any bespoke questions or go over anything? Your hand went up first.
Yeah, I'm quite interested how like the infrastructure work. Like, so
Yes.
this is probably your like day job, so I assume someone pays you. But does the playlist itself earn money through Spotify, or?
No, Spotify doesn't. YouTube will do through adverts.
Yeah.
For example, I don't know how Apple works, I'm going to be honest, in terms of that way. But usually it will be obvious with the platform. Like, Spotify's adverts pay for the free tier. Spotify's subscription pay for the main tier. You know, if they decide to go out of house and do events, that's probably paid for by the tickets. Like, it really does depend. Why are you asking that? Are you thinking, what's your thinking?
I just thought, you know, having done some sort of background research on how little artists earn through streaming, I just wondered how, basically, if your job itself and curating playlists and people listening to playlists, if the curator is getting any cut of that, or whoever employs the curator is getting a cut of that, or?
Not in legit places. Yeah. No, there may be, as I say, I've read some, and they're out there, some awful articles about playlists who claim to have you exposed to like 200,000 people, and they ask for like £200-300 a go to put you on that playlist. And I bet you any money that £200-300 is mostly going to that individual or that group of people. So yeah, I guess you just have to be quite savvy about it. If it's a big streaming company, they would have got there because they've curated great content that people enjoy and consume, and not because they've been a bit dodge. So, top line, everyone's above board and doing everything as you think, but there may be individuals operating within that sphere that might be a bit shady. So, yes.
So, how do you exactly find songs to put on playlists? I know, like, artists, they can push songs to, like, specific playlists and stuff like that. How does that work exactly? And is it, like, to a personal email to you, or, like, what exactly, how does it work?
So again, that depends per platform. So Spotify will tend to work within the platform. So they hire music curators, content specialists based on the fact that they live and breathe music. It may be that within, say, a team of 5, there might be someone that's a bit more skewed to dance, indie, rock, whatever, urban music, and they may have their kind of specialities because one person can't be a master of all. And then they might look at not only what's going on, so they might pick up on a brand new artist that they found through, it could be Spotify, it could be their network, it could be SoundCloud, it could be going out to a show, it could be finding a CD on the floor outside of SAE, I don't know. And they might be like, this sounds great, we'll give it a go. They may see it through trends in the platform, so there may be an unknown that's suddenly streaming loads and loads, and they can see obviously all the back-end details that you as an individual might not be able to, and they might work off that. But what I always say to artists who kind of ask that question, how do I get noticed, is you think about all the things you can affect. You can make your socials amazing, you can drop sick records, you can get all your influencers like your bloggers and your DJs on board, play them at club nights, make noise that way. Because if you see it from, say, a Spotify editor's perspective, one guy or girl cannot handle every person emailing them. See you soon. That's just unrealistic. And I guess if you see it from their perspective, it's not they're being rude, it's not that they disregard your music, it's just, Spotify playlists tend to serve a certain number of people and above. So it may be that actually if you make noise in all the right places, get blogs, do amazing shows, get people talking about you on Twitter, that's a much easier way than trying to hunt for one person's email in 6 months that may automatically get chucked to junk, and it might not be them doing it. So that's what I always say.
Yeah, because I think like playlists are amazing, especially for like upcoming artists. Like my band, they've been on Discover Weekly for like, I don't know, 20 times or something like that.
Oh,
It's helped them
perfect.
a lot. Like,
Yeah.
to, like, get, like,
So
more-
they'll be aware of them because they'll have a history now on the platform. With super brand new artists that are uploading their like first song, obviously it's difficult, but you don't worry about it. Like it doesn't matter if Spotify don't playlist you on your first EP.
It brings so much traffic to them and like the monthly
Yeah.
listeners.
So I guess focus then on what you're going to do as a response to that. Like, you've got eyes on you, what are you going to do? Is it the first UK tour? Is it you've got the EP ready to bam, it comes out and released? Have you got the big Pitchfork Indie Shuffle article ready to publish? Like how do you keep that momentum going with things you can control? You gents both had your hands up. Here we go.
How do you personally, when people send you music, how
Yeah.
do you personally respond to it? Like, do you actually try and listen to it as much as you can?
Oh yeah, I always do. I mean, as a kind of bit of context, I used to work with BBC Introducing, and we can get like 200 tracks a day. So yeah, hand on heart, I'm not going to say it's a 4-minute song. I might not listen to all 4 minutes of it, but you will get the gist quite quickly as to whether it's something you can work with. If you've recorded a song that, like, I used to get people to spit bars on their mobile. Like lyrically, it might be great, but I can't play that on BBC Radio, and hopefully that person would understand that. But yeah, it's like, it depends. If someone, like people tweet me and say, what do you think of this? And it's like, oh, listen, I'll be like, oh, that's cool. Well, great, best of luck. If you have a question though, like, would you playlist it? Then obviously I can give you a specific answer. But it's kind of, most people will listen to stuff if it's solicited, as I say. If it's unsolicited, it might go into a junk mail, or it might be like, okay, they'll get the out of office type bounce back that's like, there's a form to submit your music so we can consider it properly. What I would say for like emerging or kind of under the radar artists is don't look at Apple and Spotify and YouTube and be like, bam, I need them. Do all the things you can affect. Go for playlists or people that operate in the Spotify, Apple world, YouTube world that you can approach and be like, hi, you seem to play this type of music. Perhaps you would like to listen to this. Then you create that noise and that story. So the Spotify editors at the top are like, right, we're going to give you a chance on, whatever playlist they feel your music will work.
What did you do in the BBC?
What, now or before?
Before,
So I was a radio producer at Untitled Extra. I went over and worked in introducing as well. So do you guys know what BBC Introducing is?
Yeah.
So it's unsigned, undiscovered, under the radar artists. So you can upload your music as long as you have a UK postcode, and as long as it's of quality production, i.e. we can broadcast it on radio, there is a chance you will get broadcast or forwarded on to someone at the national network, say Radio 2, 6, 1 Extra, so they can consider. So I was working on that, did events, festivals, all that kind of stuff. I went away and I've literally just rejoined now, so I'm working on, it's kind of like a start-up within the BBC, working on content for DVAs, so the digital voice assistants. So how are we going to transform the BBC from a linear, you switch on the TV, click stream on the radio, to you ask Alexa, or you say, Alexa, ask the BBC 4, and find a way to navigate a way for you to get to your favourite content, possibly without you knowing what you're asking for.
Also, you said So you remember you said that you studied like the weather.
Yeah.
How did you transition from that into the music?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Annoyingly, I'm one of those people. I was doing radio from when I was 11, so it's always been there. And I did it when I was at, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people do figure out what they want to do in life when they hit 21, 22. Like, that's cool. And it's about hustle. So my first 2 years out of uni, I worked for ITV. So I was in their commercial team, so I was looking after all the adverts for ITV London. Wasn't the most exciting job, but I was working in the industry. It was an entry-level media job. And then when I left at 5 o'clock every day, I was at the Roundhouse in Camden doing a show. I was writing my own blog. I was going out there, making Bandcamp playlists with all the bands that I'd heard that I thought would work for a particular type of audience. And I had to do that for 2 years until I got my entry-level job as a trainee at the Roundhouse earning minimum wage. And then obviously that story started to build from there. So I didn't walk out of uni and walk into the BBC. Hell no. You guys probably start several rungs above on the ladder because you have this place and you have your degree. But yeah, you always have to work. I know people that have done internships every summer holiday or spring break since they started uni, and they're still at the point where they're like, okay, so I can apply for an internship, but that's only 9 months work, but at least it's a start. So yeah. You had a question first, and then I'll come to you guys.
Purely because someone asked me this when I was on my way here.
Yeah.
How do you, like, as an artist or a producer, or whatever, how do you get your music onto that Friday new music playlist?
Oh, the New Music Friday, or the big ones. Okay, so it's the same kind of answer I said for you. Like, there are versions for every major streaming service. They will probably go on past performance. So, if Taylor Swift drops a new song, she's probably going to be on there because, the average listener might want to hear that. They'll probably have a bit more of an editorial stance as well. So they might sit down and listen to a bunch of music that's come through pluggers, through labels, through other solicited ways of informing Spotify it's going to be released. If you've got a distributor. Yeah, if you've got one of those, or a publisher, they tend to have these big lists, so they might look at it. And then all the other stuff that you can affect. Maybe you've put on an amazing show, like in some part of the UK, and the editor's notice there's been so many tweets or so much buzz, or maybe someone from A&R or from a local newspaper went down and then tweeted to their network or posted something on LinkedIn, or there's a blog post or something's happened. So I always say to artists, like, don't worry. Like, New Music Friday is like up here. Like, if you literally went on New Music Friday, it would be the equivalent of being put on the front page of YouTube or on the A-list at Radio 1, like, in the nicest way possible. I don't think you're ready as an artist to react to that. And that could be detrimental to your career. Because if suddenly everyone's like, oh, God, you've got more, and you're like, mate, I've only got like 2 songs, I've just started, or I've got no money or no management, I don't know about like your laws and stuff, they'll literally be, oh, cool, bye. That's it. So I know it's hard because you want people to hear your stuff, but there are ways to do it so you get that organic engagement where you get a bunch of people that are like, I really like this stuff, and then it moves up a notch. And then you're doing your UK tours, and maybe you're getting, say, like some specialist radio play, and then suddenly Spotify will put you on some of your discovery playlists, and so on and so on. So you can build it up so that you're not frazzled, and you're getting the right team around you, and you're getting the right fans that love your music. So there are wild cards that get on there, people that have only had a few songs, but usually I always think there's a backstory behind it, like maybe they've been in development with a major label. There's always something, I always think anyway. So yeah, you had a question.
No, that was
Oh, right, same.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna ask how the artists and like up and coming and new ones.
Yeah. The editors are really on it. They can't be across everything, but there are so many outlets now. If you think about, there's Introducing, there's Amazing Radio, there's SoundCloud, there's Twitter, networks. If you know someone that happens to work, say, at Warner Records, that happens to talk to the Spotify editor and goes to the pub with them every now and then, that might be your way in. It might be the fact that you're part of a Twitter hashtag that someone notices. Like, there's no real way to predict it, but as long as your artistry is great and you're doing all the right things to develop you, or your brand, or whoever you are, then that gives you the best chance. And think of it this way, if you're a Lebanese jazz artist, Spotify is not your end goal. So you might not even want to be focusing on Spotify. Maybe you're still in the market where actually it's vinyls or live events that will push you as an artist. So obviously don't ignore the whole streaming thing, but if you're savvy about the ecosystem, you may be like, well, actually, You know, my world might be on underground DJ, forums, mixes, SoundClouds. Like that might be how I'm going to make my living and build my brand. It might be that, you know, streaming would be great, but it's not going to make or break my plans. So I guess that's your decision to make with your team. And you had a question.
Are you seeing any particular weird trends coming through at the moment? Genres, or is there something that's starting to grow a bit?
Disclaimer. Yeah, disclaimer. Obviously, I don't work for the streaming services right now, so they might see something more. I've seen, as a general overview, I mean, you guys probably know this because you like with music, but Afrobeat is really kicking off. So the point, I am collaborating with Dappy. If you know either of these people, that is not a collaboration I would have taken seriously even 6 months ago, but it is massive. And it's getting huge support. I mean, if you think about, let's take the most like anti-traditional Afrobeat person, like my aunt is like a 45-year-old white woman that lives in Romford, yeah? And she's suddenly like, oh yeah, I listen to this. And she'll be like, oh, and apparently I have to twerk. And you're just like, oh, Jesus, like this is the wrong time. Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's just having that awareness and people find it fun and people listening to Cheerleader, you know, 5 years too late or whatever. Like that's cool, right? Because imagine talking about that in an industry scene when you were like at school. People wouldn't have got it. Like Latin's still really big. You know, there was a time when it would be like, oh, it's Macarena or Pitbull, and now there's a lot of artists that are killing it. Yeah, Pitbull needs to go away. But yeah, there are other scenes bubbling, like R&B is really developing. It's really having a resurgence. You know, hip hop has diversified more than ever. Drill, the UK drill scene is massive, and it's getting a lot of respect, particularly in the South. So if this means anything to you, that's cool. As in it's not, like grime was obviously popping off in Manchester and Birmingham, it feels like drill is still very much within the M25. So yeah, scenes like that. And I think One Extra are doing this amazing, or going to release this amazing documentary on drill. So if you're into it, keep an eye out, because this is, obviously drill is like a really kind of heavy, savage type of hip hop that originates from Chicago. But it's the same, like when you hear someone homegrown, even if you're not from the South, if you hear an English voice telling about, you know, things that you recognise or can relate to, that's really powerful. And that means that people are going to stream it, they're going to Google it and look at it, and that's like another movement. Whether it sticks with us or whether it's like flashing through for a couple of years, like these are the kind of things that you can identify and pick up on streaming and serve that audience early. You look confused, you had a question.
Oh,
are you?
That's more like, I don't know if it's a fun question or whatever, but my mom and dad, they are very strange when it comes to any streaming platforms out there at all. But I introduced my mom to Apple Music, and I was just wondering, because my mom was like, oh, I don't know what to do, and like, I'm like, you can go like choose playlists. She's like, I don't get what you want. Like, is it difficult to kind of target that age group? Like my mom's like 50 plus.
Yeah.
Because like, they really like music. Like there are a lot of like music lovers in
Yeah.
that age group, but they're just like really afraid of technology somehow.
Yeah.
So is it difficult to kind of like target them because they just give up when anybody like mentions streaming or?
Yeah, there's a lot of that because like English mums, they're all like radio or they're like, oh, laptop. Like no, I tried to put Spotify on my mum's phone as an app and she was like, what's that? Like banana fingers, she couldn't do anything. So it is hard. It's kind of the chicken and egg thing. If you don't have the content, they won't come. But then if they don't want to come, why bother? So there is a little bit of that going on. And there's a huge group of people that are still very radio, still very, you know, put the CD in the CD machine and press play. But the answer to that, which is an undeniable trend, an adoption thing, is the smart speaker. A lot, because you know, imagine a nan or a granddad, they'll be much happy. But Alexa, play me something from my day, or play me, I don't know, an older artist, like play me some Cliff Richard, I don't know, and like the speaker does it, and they'll feel far more comfortable talking to something than trying to navigate. Basically, UX, a back-end navigation system, it is designed for young digital natives like yourself. You know, my mum, she's kind of gets it. She might be able to navigate on a laptop a little bit, but. The way Browse is set up and the way that we would usually search for music is not her way. Like I just want something like nice. Like, what does that mean? But I'm not joking. I just something nice, something in the background music. But actually, she'll get used to talking to say her Alexa or Google Home or whatever, and it personalises because she'll be like, oh, not that. Oh, that one. Yeah, we'll have some more of that. And then maybe she'll play like a radio station that's algorithmic. So the first track is what she wants, and then the algorithm serves her up 3 hours of music that's similar. Then suddenly she's like, oh, I like that. Yeah, I'll use that. Oh, is it £10 a month? Okay, I'll do that. And that might be through Amazon Music, or that might be through Spotify, depending on how someone's probably set up her speaker. But then you've got someone paying for music who can't use that side of things, but they'll talk. So yeah, and that's obviously really condescending because lots of mums, dads, granddads, whatever, can use Spotify fine and all the rest of it. But yeah, overall, it is a trend. But I think that's really exciting, because in the same way that younger people are discovering older music, older people might suddenly, like my aunt, be listening to Afrobeat and being like, this is nice. Don't knock it, it's a revenue source and exposure.
And she's twerking down liquid on a Saturday.
Oh man, you haven't been to Romford, have you? Might actually happen. Oh my God, yeah. So Romford Market, for those of you who don't know what Romford is, it's a unique place in life. Does anyone have any other questions? Or like, if you want to think about something, like you can always reach out to me. My name's Elise Cobain, which is now not on there, but I think I'm the only one on Twitter, so that's quite easy to find. So yeah, if you have something or like personal that you don't want to chat about, if I can help you or give you some pointers, please do.
Cool. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for spending your evening here.